I've had this topic come up the past month or so regarding breach and clear and particle deconstruction, and it's also something I'm looking to get input on from players in the community. So let's talk about this. Breach and clear was the first time we've had some sort of seasonal artifact mod that granted really extreme power gains, specifically for grenade launchers, which at the time were already really good, and for Anarchy, which is one of the best weapons the game has ever seen, if not the most powerful of all time, at least back in that season. Particle Deconstruction essentially does the same thing, but with an even easier way to trigger its effect. What both of these mods did, in combination with champion mods that could also be unlocked for these weapons, was essentially monopolize the season in terms of what weapon choices were the best to make. In Season 14, if you weren't using a grenade launcher as much as possible, you were crippling yourself. In Season 15, it's fusion rifles. Now, Breach and Clear in Season 14 felt more like a novelty. It was the first time we had gotten something that strong as a seasonal mod. There were plenty of other good mods out there in the past, like Spoils of War, which gave heavy ammo on champion finishers, or Oppressive Darkness, giving enemies a debuff that made them take more damage, but nothing on Breach and Clear's scale. Most people let it slide because, well, all I ever see is how much people want to feel powerful, and it was also the first time we had seen a mod like this. Particle Deconstruction is also getting a pass because it's basically the first time that fusions have been considered meta in PvE in the history of the franchise. The question is, though, are these mods unhealthy for the game? It can feel kind of tough to tell right now because of the situation that fusion rifles have been in. One could argue that having a set list of weapons that are capable of stunning champions is bad for the game because it limits what weapons are viable in champion-based content for the season. Others look at it as a way to dig through their vault and play with some new toys or some weapons that they haven't touched in a long time, although maybe we could dial it back a little bit on the unstoppable sidearm. If there is a problem with being limited with champion weapons per season, is there a problem with having a specific weapon class be overwhelmingly better than all of the other weapon types for an entire season? Or is that problem not a problem because it makes us feel overpowered? I started thinking about this even more than usual as I was making a tier list for the hardest and easiest GM nightfalls because people really like lists of stuff, and I had to start thinking about where I would be placing things from Season 10, 11, and 12, seasons where we didn't really have these insane mods to just carry us to victory. And I ended up putting a lot of those GMs higher up than stuff compared to recent experiences because recent stuff has had the luxury of absolutely ridiculous seasonal mods. I watched back an old Scarlet Keep run, knowing the strongest thing that we had was Spoils of War, which was, again, heavy ammo on champion finishers, which sounds nuts, but isn't nearly as crazy as Particle Deconstruction or Breach and Clear. I think back to my video on Well of Radiance back before Shadowkeep launched, where I was just really annoyed at the state of PvE because everything was so easy due to the sandbox. And I look back somewhat fondly on the GMs from Season 10, 11, 12, even 13, because we didn't have a gun doing 40% extra damage for free during the run. The stakes felt a bit higher in lesser difficulty GMs. Minus the Glassway, Season 14 had the easiest GMs combined with the strongest weapon and mod combo we've ever seen in the game, and while Season 15 has some of the harder ones, they pale in comparison to previous seasons. I don't think people were killing the corrupted final boss with a few linear shots in a well, although I didn't have a ton of experience with the corrupted in Season 11, so. I think about how in the Proving Grounds in Season 13, you needed to deal with 2 unstoppable champions as the boss went immune, and how perfectly you needed to execute on killing them. Proving Grounds GM Nightfall is coming out very soon, but I don't really anticipate that same level of difficulty this time around because of Particle Deconstruction, although I could absolutely be wrong. I do anticipate that with only auto rifle anti-barrier that we'll see quite a few Ariana's Vow in hands, but that's another story. I'm sure Bungie is well aware of the power creep issues that plagued the game during the Forsaken era, but we're certainly heading in the direction of mod power creep. Bungie potentially wanting to one-up themselves to impress the community with a seasonal mod. After all, the seasonal mods set the tone for the season in terms of the meta, and having a weak mod roster could disinterest people from playing. If we see a mod like Breach or Particle in Season 16, then Bungie will potentially be setting a standard, the almost promise that we're going to have some sort of overpowered mod completely break the game for 3 months, where if you're not using it, you're just hurting yourself and your team. The almost promise that there will be something that just makes you insanely strong with no penalties, and the almost promise that you will be basically locked to using a specific archetype of weapon for 3 months, which I know is something people don't like via champion mods. Granted, breaking that promise would be quite the good thing to certain players, but to others, the ones who just want broken stuff all the time, it wouldn't be as good. I just don't know the percentages of either side, of what's more favored. Now, I know Bungie is smart enough to know not to head back into the direction of the Forsaken era in terms of power creep, nor do I think that we are headed in that direction. After all, Well of Radiance versus Reckoning is a much different situation than a mod that sticks around for 3 months versus random content in the game. Bungie isn't rebalancing the entire game around these mods and their strength every single season, because that would be insane. Season 16 might be a good time to break this notion that we'll be getting something like Breach or Particle every single season, to maybe not set that standard, or to maybe tone down the effects of said mods so that it feels like other mods actually exist and they're not just an accessory to the main mod. It would certainly make the GM Nightfall experience a bit more interesting again. It might make them a bit harder as well. Although part of why some other mods don't get used in the seasonal artifact season over season is just because they're not very good or very useful, or they're too expensive. I understand that. It's not Particle Deconstruction's fault that many people probably aren't using Pyretic Embrace from this season, you know? If you were to personally ask me about this, just as a player of the game, I don't really mind it that much, but I'm also in the boat of, like, these two mods kind of get a pass because of their circumstances. You know, Breach was just the first mod, so it felt like a novelty. And then with Particle Deconstruction, I've been enjoying fusions being the meta. And it sure does make content a whole hell of a lot easier, which sometimes I really like, and then other times, you know, I want to be challenged a bit more. But I don't know how much longer I would enjoy one weapon type being the Omega gun every season. It feels like it would get a little monotonous. A lot of people are speculating that rockets are going to be the next gun with a crazy mod, due to how seasonal pursuit weapons and seasonal mods have been following a pattern, and also because of Gjallarhorn coming back in the 30th anniversary event. What would the implications of that be? Well, considering rockets are only in the power slot, it probably wouldn't be as dominant as Breach and Particle, because you could get those weapons in every slot, grenade launchers and fusions. That meant you probably had 2 of them equipped most of the time. Rockets, you can only have 1 rocket launcher, unless some crazy stuff's happening in the Witch Queen. They also don't come with as much ammo compared to pre-nerf Anarchy or something like Threaded Needle, which means you might need to use them more sparingly. But if they're that good, then people are going to feel pretty locked to using them. I also think that it's probably not the healthiest for the game to have underperforming or overperforming archetypes be buffed in this way. I don't think that's the goal in mind with these mods, but it certainly could come across that way to some people. Like with fusions, I honestly don't think fusions will get used, or most fusions will get used that much after Season 15 is over. I don't know if they stay meta, because when you take away both of those mods, they lose a huge chunk of power. But do they lose their meta status because other weapons have come into the meta as a result of buffs or seasonal mods? Or is it because maybe they weren't that good to begin with and only saw usage because of Particle Deconstruction? Well, time will tell on that one. Is it bad if an underperforming archetype goes back to underperforming when their mod goes away? I don't know if it's healthy for the game to just have one weapon type be the god tier gun for a few months. You know, sure, it's temporary, but if there's a new top tier gun because of a mod every season, is it really temporary? And sure, there's always going to be metas in the game. There's always going to be a best thing in the game. So does it matter if Bungie outright declares what it's going to be via seasonal mod? Is there a big difference compared to a natural meta forming just strictly through people finding out what's best through the sandbox? And is that a big deal? Is there a difference between a meta forming through Sandbox and a meta forming through Bungie declaring that X gun is going to be the best this season? One of the things they mentioned when the seasonal artifact was born is that they wanted seasons to have certain metas and certain guns that are better or more useful than others. Just things like Breach and Clear and Particle Deconstruction kind of crank that idea to 11. Maybe we're feeling the effects of this in Season 15 a bit more than Season 14 because the season is 6 months long compared to the usual 3. If Season 15 was a normal length, it would be ending in what, like a couple weeks? So a shift would be happening right around the time that people would be getting tired of fusions. Instead, we have another 3 months of this, which has just gotten people thinking. So I'm interested to hear what you all think. Are these mods okay because they give us extreme power, or do they just contribute to the feeling of being locked to a small subset of weapons every season? Talk to me. How you feeling about this? Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.